views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
All right, coming up on this edition of Today's Verdict, when you need to sign on the dotted line, it usually means a contract is involved. But you always read the fine print, and when there is a breach, what do you do next? Well, an attorney is in studio to help guide us through all things contractual. Next up, many students throughout our community require special accommodations during the school day. How do you apply for your child, and what if you are denied the request? Don't worry, we have you covered with our expert on set. And finally, do you want to be a YouTuber? Are you prepared to become famous? We have a special 7-year-old who will let you know why everyone should subscribe to his page. As you can see, we have much to get to, so stay tuned. Today's Verdict starts right now. All right, hello and welcome to Today's Verdict, the live and interactive show that gives you your legal rights and options. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesch. Well, Today's Verdict is always encouraging you to stay connected. Make sure to tweet us at Today's Verdict and hashtag Ask Today's Verdict if you have a question. Also, make sure to like us and follow us on Facebook at Today's Verdict and check us out at BronxNet.tv. Now, when two or more parties enter into a business agreement, there are certain obligations that must usually be fulfilled. But what terms are usually put into a contract, and what do you do if there has been a breach? Here to tell us more is attorney Abraham Lesch. Abraham, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take the viewers back to law school and a little contract 101, if we can. There are some elements of a contract that may seem a little boring, but let's talk a little bit about it. What do you need to make a contract?
So honestly, at a base level, you just need an offer, an acceptance, and consideration. And so an offer is, hey, I'm going to consult for you, and it's for $500 a month.
All right.
Acceptance is, okay, I accept your offer. And then the consideration, of course, is the $500. Okay. But what's interesting is that it doesn't always have to be money, the consideration. And I think a lot of people don't realize it could be, of course, the promise to do something.
I'll paint your house. You do consulting work for me.
Yeah, a barter. Which is pretty popular these days.
Okay. Now, there's a difference, just so we know, between an oral contract and a written contract. And a lot of people think, well, I have a contract, but it's not necessarily in writing. So what do we really mean there when we're talking about that?
Sure. Well, and this is a common mistake, that just because it's not in writing, it's not a contract, because that may be true sometimes. But if you agree with somebody and you with spoken word, that other person relies on that agreement and actually does something for you, there's a contract in fact, and there's detrimental reliance. You know, it gets tricky on how to prove the terms and, you know, what they said they were going to pay you or do or not do. But generally, you want to get the contract in writing. In writing.
Okay. So let's say I wanted to hire you to do some consulting for me. It doesn't all get written out at first. I assume there's a lot of dialogue that goes back and forth, right? Tell me what usually goes on in terms of the negotiation to get that contract done.
Sure. So I really look at contracts in kind of two parts. The first part is really the meat and potatoes of what you're actually agreeing to. And the second part are, most of the time, unless it's a super complex contract, you know, what I call boilerplate but necessary provisions, you know, where the choice of law is and other legalese. But basically, what you want to do is talk to the other person, the other party. Most contracts get built just through talking, and then the written part is really just the final portion of that. But to me, the most important part is just having that meeting of the minds.
So the meat and the potatoes is really sitting down with somebody and getting the negotiations done, trying to work on that. Am I correct?
Exactly.
All right. So let's say at some point now you think you're ready to put everything down in writing. Right? How does that work now? Do you get an attorney to start drafting the contract? Does one side draft it? What in your professional opinion?
Sure. I mean, it depends, of course, and how much, you know, how serious the contract is. I mean, let's be honest, there are plenty of services that offer this online, which if you know what you're doing, I'd say, great, use one of those to find a template. But I would suggest hiring an attorney, because there's no replacement for a human to bounce these ideas off of. I mean, a lot of these terms might seem simple, but you're not sure. So you call an attorney, say, hey, I want to engage in a contract with this other party. Here are the general terms. Can you draft something
What do you
up?
see that's the biggest mistake for people who are in terms of contracts and what they're signing and what they're not reading? Or what do you usually?
Sure. I mean, my practice specifically, I work with a lot of web developers and creatives and consultants. Hands down, the biggest mistake is not defining the scope of the work. And what I mean by that is, you know, you have your general terms in the contract, but the scope of the work is what you're supposed to do. And when you don't have that clearly defined, other party usually will take advantage, demanding that you do more, especially if you don't have an agreed upon fee schedule where it's like, okay, I'm gonna pay you every month for consulting services. Well, what is consulting services? What are your deliverables? Meaning, what should I expect from you?
Now, interesting, the web designer and the web designers and the consulting, is that for a limited amount of time? Because you know, some websites are many times they're upgraded. You have work that's being done on the websites. I guess maintenance, almost like a house.
Very good question. Yeah.
So how do those contracts work usually?
So typically, there's the main MSA, or the Master Services Agreement, and that generally is for that first project when you're building the website. Typically, web developers will either include as part of that an additional part of the contract for the maintenance and the service, or they agree to discuss that after the fact if they want to provide the maintenance. So it's not guaranteed that you're just going to have somebody service you month to month, making sure the site's upgraded. That's usually spelled out in these contracts.
It is
Pretty
okay.
clear cut.
Well, all right. So now we're into the contract. Maybe we're doing some goods and services, not necessarily web, and you realize, hey, you know what? This isn't working out for me. I think I should breach the contract. Why would you want to breach your own contract?
It's a good question, and this is actually called the efficient breach, which is a concept I love, but it's a little bit morally gray. Basically, sometimes it pays to break the contract. I mean, you get a better offer from somebody else to sell your goods, you're gonna get a higher price. You're like, yeah, I want the extra $10,000, great. But, you know, one of the biggest criticisms is that moral? And of course, you have a reputation, so I'm not advising.
You don't want to look like the party that always breaks contracts for a better deal, right?
Exactly. So, you know, it might make sense economically in the short term, but you got to think about it.
I'm thinking of the football player who doesn't come to training camp because they're holding out on their contract. They have a contract, but they want more money,
Right.
So they're not necessarily.
Look, it's all about money in a sense.
Damages. What kind of damages do you get when somebody decides to break a contract or breach a contract? Maybe not on purpose. They just can't pay for the goods or some issue.
Sure.
What are the damages?
Well, of course, there's just direct damages. So if you agree to buy goods from me for $10,000, I send you the goods, you don't pay, you owe me $10,000. I mean, that's just at the base level. There's also, you know, if I outlay costs because I'm relying on the contract,
Sure.
It's called restitution, you got to pay me back. Then there are things like consequential damages, which is, let's say somebody breaches the contract, and then there are these other things that happen that harm your business after the fact.
Give me an example.
You were expecting goods shipped,
Okay.
and you needed them for an event,
Right.
like an annual event. The goods are no good to you after the event. You lost a lot of revenue maybe from advertisers because the goods didn't arrive on time. They pulled their sponsorships, or people canceled the tickets, and you're incurring all these other monetary damages. Now, you can sometimes claim those if they were reasonably foreseeable by the breaching party and that they were proved to be a direct result of that breach.
Some tips. Somebody's watching right now. They think they may, need somebody to fill out a contract. Obviously, we're going to grab you. But what tips would you give somebody right now in terms of entering into a contract?
Well,
best advice you would give. Best tip.
The best tip is keep things simple. When you speak, call an attorney or Google, whatever. Just try to keep it to the basics. One thing I do want to say, because I think a lot of people don't realize this, is you can have a contract through email. Just like you don't have to have a formal written contract with all these legal flourishing terms. And so I think a lot of people need to be cautious when they're negotiating with somebody.
So even though you don't sign it, but it comes from your email account, that could be considered a contract, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Where do we get you? Where do we find you?
www.leachylaw.com. That's LICHYLAW. Or call me, 917-933-3895.
And you'll come back, right?
I'd love to come back. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we have to take a quick break, but don't worry. We'll be back with more Today's Verdict right after this.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. At work or at play, you're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Oh, hey, she's cute. Nice going, man. Things are going great for you. You've earned a night out. Good drinks, good friends. Yeah, we can go ahead and call this a good night. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Not smart. Yeah, I saw that coming. Say goodbye to her. Ouch, that'll hurt your bank account. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. I hope you like eating frozen dinners. Alone. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host, David Lesch. We are always encouraging you to stay connected. Tweet us at today's verdict. A student with a disability will many times require additional assistance. Our legislature knows this and have placed laws to help those with special needs navigate the school day. From individualized educational programs to access to extracurricular activities, you, as a parent, have rights. Well, we'll learn more with attorney Irina. Well, Irina, thanks so much for being here. You know, one of the biggest nightmares and fears for a parent is when they think their child is not having the best time in school, and it could be because of a learning disability or some other reason. Am I correct?
That is correct.
How does a parent usually find out for the first time that their child is having an issue and may need to go further?
So first, I would say to parents, always trust your gut. If you see that something is wrong, that your child is not learning, and often this comes out for parents when the child comes home, can't do their homework, or they go to school and they see their child is not functioning the same way as peers, the quality of their work is not the same, they start thinking that they're stupid, that they are not as good as their peers and classmates. So if that happens, then it's time to do a little more investigating.
Okay, and this could be as early as 3 from what I've read.
Absolutely. It can be as early as 3. Sometimes there are signs earlier, you know, especially in the case of students who have significant developmental disabilities or autism.
All right, so now there's a child maybe in pre-K or kindergarten, first grade, could be anywhere, and they're just not making the grade. They don't want to go to school. Something's not right. What does the mom or dad do?
So the first thing, especially for a child that's so young, is to confer with your pediatrician and talk about the developmental milestones. Are the developmental milestones being met? Also talk to the teachers and see what's happening in school and if this is in line with where the child should be developmentally.
All right, so now you think there's a problem, you've spoken to the teachers, and nothing's happening, which I'm sure happens more often than not.
It happens all the time,
Too often.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so what do? You gotta ring somebody, ring the bell, do something, right?
Yes, so I would say you confer with a neuropsychologist so that you can have your child evaluated. You could also speak to an attorney who could guide you in that direction to understand what your child's rights are in this regard to receive an appropriate public education.
I know we've been talking a little bit offside of the IEP. What is an IEP?
It's an individualized education program, and students with disabilities are entitled to that type of individualized education program that can address their unique special education needs.
Well, what type of unique needs might somebody need in second or third grade?
So in second or third grade, you can have a child who's not learning to read, who by all accounts and is intelligent, very verbal, but can't read the way they should be reading in second grade, is not keeping up with their peers, is unable to do homework.
Is that either dyslexia or other things?
Yes, it could absolutely be dyslexia, could be a language-based learning disability. There are so many things. It could be visual, spatial processing issues.
Now, here's what I always wonder. Let's say you take your child to a neuropsych evaluation, and you get a report back. That report, does it go to the school? Does it follow the child forever? How does that work in terms of these individual medical reports? You have to give permission for it to go on?
So yes, you absolutely do have to have permission. So if it's a neuropsychological evaluation, that means that you've done it privately. Because if you go to the school district, they typically do less testing, and they do a psychoeducational evaluation or a psychological evaluation, depending on what your students or your child's needs seem to be. Once you have a report like that, you absolutely want to share it with the school so that they can follow the recommendations made by a professional.
Now, let's say they don't. They
don't
don't follow the recommendations. You have a neuropsychiatrist evaluate, make recommendations, and you give it to the principal. They don't give it to the teacher. It's not happening. Do you go to the courts? Do you go to the administration? Where do you go?
Well, you should consult with a special education attorney. It's incredibly important that you consult with somebody who specializes in this particular area. It's incredibly nuanced, and I would not recommend consulting with just any attorney.
Do you find in your field that parents are lost and looking for a little bit of like support from anybody because they just don't know what to do? Is the school giving any kind of help whatsoever, or is it usually you're on your own?
Well, it depends on the school, and it varies greatly. Just like the quality of a teacher can vary greatly, the quality of help that you're receiving can vary greatly. So it really all depends on the school. So that there are some schools that will help you and guide you along the way, and then other schools where it's not. It's just not happening.
Well, do you have a right to a tutor? Do you have a right to have certain things in the school? The right to take I mean, let's say it's hard for you to sit and take exams. Do you have the right to take an exam for twice as long as anybody else?
You absolutely do. You can have directions read and reread to you. You can take a test in a separate location.
Let's talk lawyer to lawyer now, okay? Let's talk damages, all right? Let's say the child's not getting the help that they need, and they've lost, 6 months, a year, 2 years, had to be left back. Is there a rights or the remedies?
There are, so you can receive what are called what's called compensatory education, and that can be in various forms, whether it's services like physical therapy or occupational therapy that the child may need, or whether it's educational services in the form of tutoring. You can also go in the direction of looking at an appropriate placement for your child, which may be a private school, and those can be extremely expensive.
Well, who pays for the private school if that happens?
Well, it depends on the parent's financial situation. So there are some schools which will allow the child to enroll unilaterally by the parent, but will wait for funding while the parent goes through a hearing process with the school district.
Okay. Somebody's watching right now. They have a child who's not doing well, and they see you. What do they do?
So if the child is not doing well and you know that they're not receiving the services they need and they're not making the progress that they should be making, I would say consult with an attorney. It's time. Understand your rights.
By the way, so everybody knows, where do we find you?
So you find me at nycspecialeducation.com or at my office number 212-688-1100.
Now, I have a question for you, and you give me your opinion, what you think. I know there's been a lot of discussion in some of the specialized schools in New York about changing them so that maybe just the population of the school changes. So we're giving a little bit more of an opportunity to those who aren't maybe as strong on the testing-wise to get into the schools, Bronx Science, Stuyvesant, those type of schools. Any kind of opinion on that?
In terms of the testing, so, when you have additional time on tests, when students need to be in a distraction-free environment, especially a student, for example, with ADHD, I think you're just leveling the playing field for those students so that they can function and perform at a level that's really commensurate with their intelligence.
Well, Irina, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming back?
Absolutely.
All right. We have to take a quick break, but don't worry, we'll be back with more Today's Verdict right after this.
They call me Prince like I'm royalty or something. But the places I've lived ain't no palaces. So I don't need grilled salmon or a new scratching post. Just give me a cardboard box and a can of tuna and we're good. You can even change my name. I'm cool being the kitty formerly known as Prince.
Maria, so how's work?
It was fourth period biology. Our students just weren't getting how easily viruses spread. So Miss Bell and I had them role play a zombie virus outbreak. By the time they had all learned the lesson, all the living were dead. Hey, how's your job going?
That big sales meeting I planned? Next year, I might get to go.
Cool.
All right, welcome back to Today's Verdict. I'm your host, David Lesch. We are always encouraging you to stay connected. Tweet us at Today's Verdict. YouTube has been a great source of information and entertainment for many adults and kids. Today we have a very special guest who will be telling us all about being a YouTuber. His name is Brody Lesch, but before we get to him, let's take a look at one of his videos. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, welcome to another video. Today we are playing I know what we're playing, but go in the comments and see what's there. So, see what we're gonna play. Why, yeah, we can play two posters. Hey. Guys, I'm not talking, guys, but how today? Was it fruity? It's fruity. Oh my gosh, this is so cool.
All right, we're back with a very special guest, a very wonderful little boy, Mr. Brody Lesch. Brody, we were looking at a video earlier, and I don't understand what that was. Can you describe for the viewers what is a 246? What is that?
It's a game that you're supposed to add numbers, and you go by 2, 4, 6, 8. Well, not like that. Like you do 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, then 32, then 64, then 100.
You just keep going.
And you want the highest score, before you fill each one up and you have no combination.
Now, I understand you'd like to be a YouTuber, because I think YouTubers put things like that on. First of all, what is a YouTuber?
It's somebody or lots of people who do something and post it on YouTube, like gaming or vlogging or doing something else.
And do you know any famous YouTubers?
Yes.
Who? What do you know?
Super Mario Logan, Corey X Kinshin, Jaded Animations, The Odd Ones Out, Dan TDM. The most famous YouTuber of all from now time is PewDiePie.
PewDiePie?
Not that.
No, PewDiePie? Oh, PewDiePie. All right, so if you're going to become a YouTuber, are you going to have, what are you going to put on your YouTube channel?
Gaming stuff.
Gaming stuff? And what type of, like first-person shooter games or just regular, like Geometry Dash games?
That rage game.
What kind of rage game?
Geometry Dash is a rage game.
Oh, it is a rage game? All right, so we don't have too much time left, so lastly, all right, for anyone who's watching and a little boy wants to be a YouTuber like you, what would you tell him to do?
If you want to record, you need to go to YouTube. There's this camera that goes like this, and you press it, and you need if you want to go live, you need to wait 24 hours. I don't know why, though.
Are you looking to get more subscribers for your channel?
Yes.
And more views?
Yes.
Well, you know you're going to get some now, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. We really appreciate that. And that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and of course you, the viewers, for watching. If you missed any part of today's show, be sure to check it out at www.BronxNet.tv. Also remember, if there's a legal issue or topic you'd like to see in a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to email me at davidlesch@BronxNet.org. And remember, Brody Lesch, go to his channel and become a subscriber. We'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Peter, and there's nothing I love more than sharing vegetables with my friends.
Come on in. Help yourself to anything.
That's why we give our food the utmost respect it deserves. Did you know there are simple steps we can all take to help save food? You can cook it, store it, even share it. Just don't waste it. Because when it comes to food, better ate than never. To learn more, visit SaveTheFood.com.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving, the ultimate party foul.
Fast-paced family life in need of a slowdown?
Hello, I'm Dr. Spruce. Did you know all those green shapes on maps are parks and forests? It's true. Visit discovertheforest.org and plan to visit a park or forest near you, instead of just wondering what it would have been like.
While the word forest might make you think of distant lands from far, far away, please note parks and forests are closer than you think, which means things like beautiful scenery, fresh air, and family time are also closer than you think.